Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, May 14th. It is 4:31 p.m. and we are having an early meeting of the Policy Committee here in the Nashua High School North Boardroom. I'm here, Heather Raymond. We also have Ms. Lampier,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
and Mr. Posca. Write it down. All right. So I just wanted to touch on, last night we had pulled a bunch of policies from our full committee, our full Board of Ed meeting, and those just the edits didn't make it into the packet. So they're the edits that we already discussed and agreed on in policy committee. For whatever reason, the version that went out was not the correct version, so we're not bringing them back to policy because there's no changes. We're just gonna get the correct edited forms and have it at the next board meeting, unless people have an objection to that.
Sounds good to me.
No, I think, I talked to Miss Raymond, just it keeps it all cleaner. There was just some of the forms had been updated. The policy itself is ready to go, but then we had JCLD R1, JCLD R2, so it almost made sense more just to put the whole peanut butter and jelly sandwich together and bring it forward as opposed to just taking it apart.
Right. And I know we had fixed the language in the one, but it was a one-line thing as opposed to the multiple edits that we had in the other one.
Okay.
So I felt like last night I didn't really explain it well, so apologies to everyone. Oh, my pen is broken. I'm just having an afternoon. Okay, so this week we have a bunch, but I don't think that most of them are going to require a lot of conversation. So first is policy JJJA, student co-curricular activity eligibility, academic expectations.
Raymond, if I just want to pass out, in the packet that was provided for you, both updates didn't get in there. It was my fault. So I have updated the two changes to that policy that are, so they're both redlined in your, these updated piece.
Oh, okay.
Relatively minor updates. If you don't mind, Ms. Raymond, I'll jump into it and just explain what
Yeah,
those
that's
two
perfect.
updates.
I was just scrolling and I see that the blue is not the same as the red here.
So this came from our athletic director, Lisa Gingras, and the two changes are on page 2. It details and explains what the beginning of each athletic season is at the middle school level. They're on trimesters. It looks and feels a little bit different. So those are the updates there, as well as the academic expectations for that for eligibility. And then on page 3, the red lines are when mid-season check-ins will occur for academic, for the athletic teams for each of the seasons, fall, winter, and spring. So those are clearly identified for the fall, winter, and spring for all seasons, and then the beginnings, and it details the starts of the athletic seasons at the middle school level. A little bit change when we went to the trimester, and a little bit of change from the academic expectations before, so just kind of clarifying everything and delineating it much more clearly than previously been.
So if this looks familiar to us, it's because we just approved it. It was in this committee in February, and it was approved by the full board in March. But having kind of reviewed and lived with it, the athletic director would like to change it to make it more reflective, because I think we had kind of just mirrored the high school stuff before.
Yeah, we had like just general dates.
Right.
This is more specific. I think it looks good.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we talked about last time and that I really appreciate about Ms. Gingras is that when we updated the policy last time, and this kind of continues it for the middle school, is the idea is to have kids who are, for whom extracurricular and co-curricular activities are their motivating factor for being in school, to not penalize them when they're struggling, but instead to set up like a support system so that they can continue to play until it becomes the playing is getting in the way of the academics, but to try and have more check-ins and more support for our students, which I just think it's the right thing to do. Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? Nope. All right. So I am going to move that we send the changes on this redlined paper copy to write it down because it's different than what's on the sheet. To the full board for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. I'm an aye too, sorry. Okay. Great. So the next one is policy ACE, and I sent everyone an email earlier today about some Title IX changes that are coming. However, I don't want to wait on ACE. ACE is a policy that we really ought to be updating every single school year. Yep.
So there's two different policies in the policy. There's ACE and there's AC-E.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make sure that this one is AC-E and
Oh.
it wouldn't replace ACE.
Correct. So this is AC-E. So we will be talking about the Title IX policy, the meat and potatoes of the policy, but I'm waiting for the legal updates. So the federal government and I think the Biden administration just made some pretty sweeping changes to Title IX that I don't fully understand yet because I haven't taken a training about it. However, all of the lawyers are working on updating the sample policies up at the state school board association, and then they'll be doing a training and having some recommendations for us. I know that the district just did a training on the Title IX changes, but we're not in a place to change that policy yet, but we will be.
Yes, over the last, about 4 weeks ago, we had a meeting with Megan Glynn from Drummond and Woodson Law Firm, who gave us an overview of it. Last week, we had the formal presentation of the updates that are changes in Title IX. Drummond and Woodson are currently working with the state to update the policy, so I would think in the next couple of weeks, we should be seeing some drafts of that policy coming out.
So we have multiple legal groups working on this. And so, so this policy, AC-E, is the annual notice of contact information. And I put it on now at the end of the school year, only because we were officially making Mr. Baus our director of HR. And then that caused us to realize that all of the names of, well, not all of it, a lot of the names of people had changed. So this is a policy that we really ought to be pulling every, July or August every year and looking at and making sure that our names are correct. I would rather have titles than names, but the state law requires the names. I asked because I was like, well, why don't we just put the title? But that is not allowed because it has to have the exact extension number and email address for the person to contact.
Okay.
So that is the only change that we're making at this time is updating. Mr. Baus is our Director of Human Resources. He's also our Title IX coordinator for now. I know we talked about in budget hiring a Title IX coordinator. So when we do that, hopefully all this will still be fresh in my mind and we can update it with that person's name.
Okay.
But frankly, if you call Mr. Baus, he will get people in touch with who they need to be. Like it's not a black hole of, and then our special education, so our 504 coordinator is now the director of special education, Mr. Alexander, instead of the director of student services because we switched around Mr. Chopa's job responsibilities so that he's really focusing on our English language learners now. This is just reflective of changes that the board has made over the last 6 to 9 months. And we're just making sure that our policy has the right numbers for people to call.
Okay. It seems straightforward.
Yeah. The other thing to note is for each building, like if a parent or a student or a guardian or someone or an employee had a Title IX concern in the school, typically the first point of contact is the principal. So if anybody from the community contacts a board member and says, who do I talk to about this? It's the same as all of our other, chain of command stuff. So it starts with the principal and then the assistant superintendent and then the superintendent. That makes sense? All right. So I move that we approve that we send policy AC-E to the full board.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. See, it looks like a long list, but it's really not that The next one is EEA. So we have a new director of transportation, and as he was looking at, we're getting like a new database, and he's looking at the redistricting for the middle school and doing all of those things. He noticed that our policy says we only provide transportation from grades 1 to 5, but in fact we do not. We provide transportation for kindergarten to 5 and 6 to 8. So we want to make sure that our policy reflects the fact that we are driving our kindergartners. We have no intention of not driving our kindergartners. So
Okay.
that's literally the only change at this time. Questions or concerns?
No.
Listen, sometimes you got to do the housekeeping stuff. I don't want someone to, like, I don't want to be in a situation where a parent of a kindergartner thinks that their kid can't have transportation. So, all right. So I move that we send EEA to the full board.
Second.
Yeah, I can't spell. I've gotten to the point now where I just put initials instead of our names, which is really. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 We're at a point on the board where we don't have people with the same initials anymore, so makes it easy. All right. So now we get into a little bit more meat and potatoes. GBCD, which is criminal background investigation and criminal records check. We include both policies in our packet. We included our old policy and the new policy recommended by the School Boards Association. Our policy was 4 pages long. The new one is 7 pages long, and there's quite a bit of the same, quite a bit of things in different order. The big legal changes that happened last year were, pull it up and I'll tell you exactly what it is. It was regarding who is allowed to review the criminal records checks. So previously, only the superintendent could do it. So for all of our 2,500 employees and all of the contractors and all of the bus drivers and all of the, I don't know, playground monitors and everyone, only the superintendent could look at them. And it was huge. Thank you. Now he can designate another person to help him with that. Typically, either an assistant superintendent or the director of HR. That's RSA 189.13. So hopefully this will take some of the burden off of the superintendent because it's extremely time consuming, but also have a second pair of eyes so that nothing gets missed. The other part that has changed, there's 4 parts that have changed. The second part is in 2020, there was a bill that tasks the Department of Education with doing bus drivers and bus monitors. Because previously the superintendent was doing it.
Yeah, I was wondering why the bus drivers and bus monitors were in a different category.
I don't know. It's a bill that the legislature passed in 2020.
So does the superintendent not see the criminal records at all?
So I think what happens is if there's an issue, the Department of Department of Education contacts the school district,
Okay.
or they contact the
First student over.
contract agency.
Okay.
So, and honestly, I suspect that the reason they did it is because so many districts use an outside agency like First Student or something instead of having their own district fleet.
Oh, so would have to be checked by many different districts, right? Because the employed by First Student, which works in a lot of districts.
Right. So now
Okay.
the Department of Education is handling those criminal background checks. The background checks still must happen. They must have their fingerprints done. That's sent out to the FBI core reports. But instead of those people coming to our local district office, they go to the Department of Education, and then the Department of Education takes action if there's a problem.
Okay.
And then in 2023, I'm sorry, I messed that up. In 2020, who was the bus drivers got put on the Department of Education. In 2020, the bus drivers got put with the Department of Education. In 2023, The transportation monitors are people hired by the district. So the school bus drivers are hired by first student,
Mhm.
and the criminal background checks go to the Department of Education. But now the bus monitors, if we have any, are hired by the district, and the district is responsible. All right, there's a lot of changes, and I'm clearly not.
Oh, okay. Well, it seems like the bus drivers and the monitors would work together, but I guess if they don't, if they're hired by different people,
And the
then-
monitors are hired by
Bus,
us.
district.
So, right.
right? So the school bus drivers and the school buses are, well, the school buses are property of first student. The bus drivers are employed by first student.
Right. So
But
it
if
really falls where you're employed, who you're employed by.
okay.
But we hire the bus monitors, and what I'm thinking of it in these circumstances is cases where, because the school bus drivers really aren't disciplinarians, right? They're not supervising the kids; they're driving them to school, and their focus is on traffic and making sure everybody's safe. But if a district needs or wants to put a monitor on the bus to be in charge of keeping the students, calm and well behaved, that's our responsibility, and we do the background check.
Okay.
And then the last change was SB 136, which passed in 2023, which prohibits employment or volunteering of anybody whose DOE credentials have been revoked or are under suspension. So the Department of Education has a whole list of reasons why someone's teacher certification would be revoked. So if your teacher certification is revoked by the Department of Education because you violated their guidelines, you can't come back in and be a volunteer in the building.
Okay.
So these are all changes designed to keep kids safe.
Okay.
And how do we monitor something like that?
So there's a person at the state who's in charge of it, and they let us know.
Okay.
So part of this new policy, I'll just go through it. Where's it? I know I just scrolled too far. GBCD. The first page is just definitions, which I like. We didn't have that in there before, and so now it makes it very clear to everyone. And so one of the definitions, number 8 on page 2, says educator candidate. And number 7 is the designated volunteer. Um, go back. It shows applicant, that's anybody applying. Conditional offer of employment means that we now, and we've been doing this is our practice. Before you get hired, you have to have a successful criminal history check, right? And they check the Department of Education certification. Now, if you're not certified, there is a process to get certified, and there's waivers from the Department of Education. That is but there's evidence that you have that, right? Like there's a whole communication string between the Department of Education, the person working on their certification, and the hiring district. So it happens a lot where we have teachers who are fresh out of college and they have a certain amount of time to complete the extra work to get their certification, or someone who's come from industry to teach a CTE class. And so they have, I forget, it's like 2 or 3 years to complete the extra coursework and take the exams to get their certification. And then if they don't, the state Department of Education maintains a list of those things, and then they let the local district know when someone's not in compliance. And we actually have, it's Diane Vino and someone else.
Of course, we also get updates from the state that go to Dr. Andre and Dr. Safdie and myself to review that list to make sure that we are still in
Right, but then we also have our coaches, like Ms. Vino and I forget the
compliance.
other.
Papanicola.
Papanico?
Papanicola.
Oh, that's a cool name, Papanico. Who the district employs, and their jobs are to help teachers navigate this process. It's a big deal. The certification process, not the Corey report. The Corey report is easy. You just get your fingerprints scanned, and then the FBI tells us if you're okay. So here under general requirements, it talks about that the superintendent will require, because everything is his responsibility, the background check, and reviewing the New Hampshire Department of Education list of revoked and suspended credentials.
So I have a question on that. If someone has had their credentials revoked or suspended several years ago, they decide they want to volunteer in a different school district,
Yeah.
anyone going to know?
It's on the,
On the
they
list.
stay on the New Hampshire list. Now,
Oh, so they're not taken off it. They're stay on it year after year after year.
Yep.
Okay.
I actually don't know what the process is if someone, like, I know that there's an appeal process, but if you lose your appeal, I don't know how one would ever, like, how long the list lasts or how they would ever get off of it. My understanding is it's kind of indefinite.
There are certain situations where it might be revoked for a year or 2 years or pending some
Oh, okay.
So that review of that list on a regular basis is important for just what talking about in case something comes up. Someone might, try to get a job in another district several years later, and you get to review those names.
Okay.
And then how does that work between districts, like between states? I mean,
It's not.
okay.
Oh, well, that's not good.
Well, I remember working so I used to work for DCIF here, and I worked for the sister agency in New York. And when you move to New Hampshire, DCIF requires that you have a DCIF records check when you move, so that they aren't hiring someone who's been, convicted of abuse or neglect. But they can't do like New York; they could only do New Hampshire. I've lived here for 5 days, and there was nothing in New York either, just to put that on the record. But it's always interesting to me, like the communication between states, especially since we're a border town. I don't like that. Okay. So it even gives examples in this particular policy because the revocation of suspension is something fairly new. It's only been around for the past, I think, 3 years.
It is since I've been here, it's been in place, but I knew that was relatively new.
Right? So this policy actually gives some examples um, just to make it clear for applicants and parents and employees. So if your credentials have been suspended or revoked, you cannot come in and volunteer in the library. You cannot be a volunteer coach. Like, the Department of Education's position and state law is that if behavior is egregious enough to have it revoked or suspended during that time, you are not to be in the public schools around our community's
Okay.
children. So yeah, there's a section here about if you falsify and say that you haven't been convicted of something, and we find out that you have, you are immediately terminated. You don't need to do anything else except find out. And then there's a whole thing on uh, criminal records checks, and we already talked about the bus driver change. And then it talks about section 5 offenses. We went back and forth on whether or not to include them. They are included in the old policy, but it's fairly easy to look up what those are. Should anyone want to do that? So I'm kind of neutral about whether or not we want to cut and paste the section 5 offenses into the new policy. We did have them listed in the old one, and they're significant. They're like murder, child pornography, and human trafficking. I mean,
I mean, I don't see why we shouldn't include them. Just to make it more clear for someone who wants to look this stuff up.
okay. So let's take the section 5 offenses. There's a list. Um, insert section 5 offenses from the old policy to what page is that? Page. So page 2 has the definition, and then page 5 has a whole list of where to find the section 5 offenses. Does anyone have any strong feelings about which place to put it?
Strong feelings.
All right. Oh, it is there. I don't know. I must
Yeah.
have scrolled too fast. Never mind.
Oh, okay, great.
There we go.
Sorry, all. My pen scratching. Great.
I have a question because I can't find it. You said that the superintendent can get help with looking at the CHRC, the criminal history record check, and I wasn't sure where it says that in here because I can't find it.
Is it?
Just have to look at it. Says the superintendent will require a background check. The superintendent may assign the background check investigation to someone other than a designee, with the background investigation to be completed prior to doing it. So it's page 3, number 1.
It says the superintendent may assign the background investigation,
Yep.
but not the CHRC. And isn't that the part that's the burden on the superintendent is the criminal history record check?
It's so, yes. But I think this allows the person, so right now the superintendent gets them and reviews them, right? And then if he has to ask someone questions about what's on there, he has to be the one making those phone calls. He can't even, like, we had an issue probably 5 years ago with the prior superintendent where like he couldn't even have his secretary call the person to make the appointment. The superintendent himself personally had to call the applicant and make the appointment for the applicant to come in and talk about it.
Okay.
So this allows the superintendent gets the background checks, notices that there's an issue, and he gets to decide if he's personally going to track it down and find out what the story is behind the issue, or if he's going to send it to Mr. Rouse, or if he's going to assign his secretary to make the appointment so that they can come in and meet with him.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, but he still has to be the one to review the criminal history record.
He has to look at them.
Okay. All right.
Now, if there is an issue, he can designate to one of his senior staff to be the one to find out the details and then, make the superintendent still ultimately responsible for the decision. Um, I think that there are circumstances in the realm of possibility where something comes up with a hit on the criminal background check, and then once you've had the conversation, maybe it's not what it initially appeared. I can't think of any examples right now, but I feel like it's within the realm of the universe that could happen.
Okay. If the superintendent decides to hire someone who has committed an offense that's not a Section 5 offense, do they still have to bring that before the board so that we can vote on it?
So the policy says that all decisions regarding employment shall conform to our policy AC, which is includes the Title IX stuff that we're going to look at. It says that, it doesn't say that, but we can add it. The other thing it says is that he's not allowed to hire anyone with a revoked or suspended credential. If we want to add something in, item D below. So item D, refusal, special results. Results are delivered to the superintendent or his designee shall be responsible to retain their contract designee, shall destroy them, pending charges. So here it is on page
Number 5.
number 5. If the superintendent chooses to nominate, appoint, or assign an applicant who has a history of conviction or pending charges, the final hiring decision or appointment of another covered person must be approved by the school board.
So how would we as a school board know that this is being followed?
He has to tell us. So his job is if someone comes up with a criminal background check hit of some sort, and he chooses not to hire them, we don't need to, right? If someone comes up and he says, okay, this happened 35 years ago, and they, maybe they were a gang member as a teenager, and they, got their master's degree in prison and have completely changed their life. And for the last 20 years, they've been working on improving society, and we want to hire them to work in our suspension program. At that time, he would come to us and say, here's the history of this person and why I think they're a good fit for this position.
If I mean, like if the superintendent doesn't come to us with the information, and we have no way of having it, and
I would say,
I mean,
if we were to find out that the superintendent had violated this policy, which is also state law, under RSA 18913A, that would really be grounds for firing the superintendent. Because I think this is really serious,
all right, thank you.
right? So it's important that the superintendent notify the school board as soon as he becomes aware that there's an issue, if he wants to continue the employment of that person. And then this policy says that at the end of the day, it's the school board's decision. That answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. But I think that's what the board had indicated they. The other part on this page, number 7, is that the superintendent or their designee may require another criminal background check at any time during a person's employment. So if we hire someone and they've been working here for 30 years, and then they're on the news because they got arrested for something, the superintendent can ask them to take another criminal background check, right? Or and take appropriate action.
Okay.
Or even if, we're a small city, but the rumor mills, rumors abound. When rumors come to him, he should be asking people to take another criminal background check, prioritizing the safety of our kids. And I think we're pretty clear about our expectations. Okay. I think that's it. The other thing I asked about different states, because we can't check the. I think there's a way to check if someone's certified. Like there's something you get when you're certified that you can say, "Here's my certification from Massachusetts or Rhode Island or whatever." Um, but for criminal background checks, if someone has a criminal history of state crimes in Massachusetts, that is still covered by this policy. You don't get a free pass because you moved across the border, even if it's not a federal crime. State crime.
So a state crime from Massachusetts would be listed on the criminal history record check?
It should be.
And if it's not, the policy says you're required to disclose it when you're hired.
Okay.
So if you fail to disclose it, and it doesn't come up, and you find out later, that's grounds for termination.
Okay.
And again, I feel like I'm being really mean and hard about it, but we're talking about other people's children, and so we want to be as safe and careful as possible.
That question is on our hiring packet when they apply. Crime in another state.
If someone clicks yes on that, based on this new policy for the superintendent as a final hiring, they have to ask us. Okay. That's all I've got on this one. The last thing is about reports of criminal offenses post-hire, but we already talked about that.
Answered all my questions, and it looks like a good policy. And I like the idea of it matching up with the rest of the state. So I don't. I think we should move ahead with it.
Okay. All right. So I move that we send policy GBCD to the full board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I have to scroll. I was trying to print, and my printer had this horrible paper jam. I had it in pieces on the floor of my husband's office this afternoon, and I did not get it put back together before leaving. so annoying. I started playing with it at like noon because I was like, I want to have it in my hand so I can write on it. All right, so evaluation of instructional programs. So this policy I think aligns with our curriculum committee. And it basically just says that the superintendent will evaluate instructional programs uh, annually in accordance with board policies, and then he will, from time to time, report to the board on the progress. The biggest change that we're making is previously it said that he should make an annual report on the programs. And that's not really how Nashua has operated in the last 20 years. We don't, because we're the city or because of our size, I don't know, we don't make an annual report. Other districts have a day where the superintendent has this like, giant annual report and he reports all the data about the school district like at once. Nashua tends to break it up into bites. We have our finance committee meeting every month. So instead of getting a big financial report, once a year or twice a year, we have the superintendent give us information every month so that we're on top of it. We do the same thing with curriculum. We have curriculum committee every month. And so I thought it was important to touch this policy and then also make it clear that we want kind of ongoing updates about it. And then also, it helps the curriculum committee because now the curriculum committee can say, listen, we want an update on this curriculum, we want an update on how this is doing. It used to be, when I first started on the board, that curriculum committee, at least 3 times a year, they would bring the iReady data. So there would be a meeting designated to, well, this is what I already said at the beginning of the year. Now we're going to compare it to the middle of the year. Now we're going to compare it to the end of the year. And then there was a discussion about, well, how does this impact the curriculum that we're using? Is it helping the kids or not helping the kids? And I feel like the curriculum committee has kind of gotten away from having those robust discussions about test scores. And part of that was COVID. I'm not on the curriculum committee, but I think it's a discussion that the members should have on what they're looking for updates on, how are our programs working to meet the needs of our kids.
Should we discuss this policy with the curriculum committee or ask them if they want to look at it before we make any changes?
Close to that.
I'm not opposed either. When Ms. Raymond and I spoke about this, the conversation we had was like, first of all, this is a policy that had not been touched since 2008. So we wanted to update it to accurately reflect what we're doing. And I think what we are doing, there are times when the superintendent will bring a curriculum update to the full board. So I think that really accurately reflects what's happened. So from time to time, there are updates, but they're on a more regular basis through the Curriculum Evaluation Committee, updates being provided about what is going on in our schools on a regular basis. I do feel like it's in line with what we do on a regular basis, but I think at any time, I think the board has the right, and they can, whether it be through the curriculum evaluation or through the full board, ask for an update about the curriculum.
When does curriculum meet again?
Not till June.
We could make a motion to send policy instead of sending it to the full board. We can make a motion to send the policy to curriculum committee, and then one of us, I'm happy to do it, go to curriculum committee and say, I can talk to, Mr. Clappy and say, listen, we have this policy, but we'd like another set of eyes on it before we send it to the full board.
Are any of the policy members on curriculum? Darling?
Darling is.
I don't know. I just, because because they're a whole other group of people. And I just feel like professional courtesy almost would
course,
be
yeah.
to have to get their opinion on it.
So let's do that. Let's send IL to curriculum to see if they would like any input or changes or to flesh it out more.
Okay. Yeah, I'll second that.
I mean, typically, we've asked other committees to review policies with varying results in the past. Like we've done it before, and we've come back with this is how we want our policy to look. This is exactly what we want, and we've been like fine, and we've had them come back and be like, I don't know why you're doing this.
Okay.
So,
We'll see which response we get this time.
right. All right. So all in favor of sending I out to curriculum, say aye.
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 All right. And so let me write a note to myself to email Mr. Claffey and tell him why I did that. Sorry. I I think as I get older, the more I'm like, dude, I just want everything on paper again. I know. I don't know what happened, but I am done with this. What did I do with my
I feel the same way. The meeting before last, I printed everything out, but I had like 150 pages and
No, I haven't. I
threw
just
them all
have to
away. So
just have to move my windows around because I'm apparently too old to use the computer. Okay. Um. Oh, did you hear back from?
Yes, that's why it's in the pack.
All right, great. So policy, we have a name for this policy. It's policy EBBB-R for this form called the New Hampshire Department of Safety Bureau of Emergency Medical Services Instructions for Completing the AED defibrillator. What do they want?
At this time, I was in speaking with Safety Officer Chris Lasad. It's unclear why this was in here. Maybe there had previously been some type of law. The next couple policies are some of the older policies going back to review. This policy had been on our books since 2003. So as we looked back and touched it, it was on Mr. Lasad's recommendation that he does not see any reason why this has to be a policy in there. So I think the recommendation was to rescind this policy.
Right, it seems like this form should be in the nurse's office and maybe near the defibrillator machine.
yeah,
Right? Who uses the defibrillators? Like, are there people who are certified to do it?
I don't have a good answer for you.
Right.
No, I just think, when if there was at a gym on a rental on a Sunday morning, I think it's whoever is available.
Right. All right. So yeah. Honestly, if someone's having a heart attack, they're not going to take the time to go on our website and look up the policy. They're going to they're going to want the instructions on the machine. All right. So I move that we rescind EBBR.
okay.
All right. All in favor of rescinding, say aye.
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 Okay. And then the last policy we have tonight doesn't even have letters. This is how old this policy is. It's policy 2210.1.
I looked, and this was the last one with numbers.
Yes.
So this is like a huge accomplishment.
It's exactly what Miss Raymond said.
Congratulations, guys.
Yay. And Miss Bishop started this process when she was the chair of policy 4 years ago. And so we have made it through all of the old policies. Yay for us. And so this one, we don't do this. This is on advertising in curriculum and school publications. So I don't know if there was a time when, I don't know, when people had ads in their textbooks, but we don't have ads in the textbooks.
Well, school publications though, like if there was a school newspaper or something like that, would have.
True. The yearbook
see.
does
Yearbook.
have advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So, my feeling was we've never had a situation that I'm aware of where the yearbook committees, which are controlled at each school, have had someone trying to put inappropriate material in the yearbook that they have had to that has gone to print or that they've had to say no to?
I mean, usually Jolston's or whoever, yearbook publishers will step in. And I used to be in charge of a college yearbook, and we actually took it away from Jolston's because they were censoring the yearbook, and we were in art school, so we were like, yeah, no, forget it.
Yeah,
We'll
you
go
can't
elsewhere.
And I think between the yearbook coordinator and the building principal, it
Yeah.
does have to be reviewed
Yep.
there anyway, so.
So, and there are things in here, I think, so I don't have strong feelings about it. The recommendation from administration was we don't need it. Because we already have prohibitions against um, images and stuff about cigarettes, liquor, drugs, drug paraphernalia, sexual things as part of our drug and alcohol free campus, as part of our, other policies um, governing how we operate. Um, I'm not really opposed to keeping it, but I don't know that anyone's referenced it in the last 21 years.
Johnson, you seem to be the one that experience. What do you think?
I mean, so the problem is, of course, if you then take it away completely, a few years down the road, somebody does, massage parlor ad in the back of a yearbook or something. I mean, just throw it out there, like it could pop up, at some point in time in the future. So
So, okay. And so then my question is, if we want to edit it, are there parts of it that we want to keep and parts that we don't want to keep? Like, for example, it says, number 7, a list of students' names or addresses shall not be released by the district for the purpose of advertising or marketing. Well, that's illegal, right? So that's covered already by FERPA. I don't know that we need to list it in this policy specifically. Maybe the laws weren't around when the policy was first written. I don't know. So is this something that we want to take a look at? Because I didn't make any. Sometimes, usually, Mr. Posca, um, communicates with other experts in the district, and then he and I meet and we come up with like red line copies for you guys, so that it's been vetted typically by teachers, administrators, whoever needs to, school nurses, before I see it, and then before we bring it to you guys.
and what school publications do we currently have? Did either high school have like a newspaper or anything, or?
Not on a regular basis, and I think there's, even the school newspaper, I'm going back to a previous district, everything that's vetted in the school newspaper usually goes through the building principal at the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Have,
All
I
of
think
this.
to Miss Raymond's point, I think some of these are captured in a variety of other different places.
So if this is not my wheelhouse, so if you feel that it is helpful, I'm okay with keeping it. I think we need to edit some of it though, like
I mean, it can definitely be very simple, much
Right.
more simplified down, and also in terms of, I mean, we're not gonna be dealing with CDs or,
right. So I think I would say like number 1, advertising in conjunction with certain curricular areas. That makes sense, right? However, it doesn't need to be approved by the assistant superintendent for instruction because that position doesn't exist.
right.
So I would, I would say like we would need to edit number 1 to say the building principal or the teacher. I mean, how high up does the teacher need to go in order to show a travel brochure?
And I guess my pushback there, a conversation would be, I don't think we're seeing this as, I don't think this policy is driving all the work that's going on. I think
Right.
this is a policy that's just been
This policy is
hanging
just
out
right.
there for a while.
And it's just reinforcing elements that are already in effect.
That's how I feel.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, I mean, as long as, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then we could probably do away with it and be perfectly fine.
Can we double check? Because the yearbook is an interesting question. And I don't think there's any other, there is a paper at North occasionally.
And then they run advertising. So,
Honestly, I think that our students' experiences have changed so much, even since COVID, right?
Yes.
Like before COVID, Google Classroom was like used by 5 teachers maybe, and now everybody has a Google Classroom. There's a Google Classroom for every club. There's a Google Classroom for every class, and And a lot of the student communication around some of these things is through other approved district apps.
Why I think we're covered in other ways for this.
And I know sometimes even the apps have, I mean, like if you're registering your kid for athletics, there's ad that pops up because it's part of
Part of the
the
app.
app.
But we have a whole policy on part of our digital information policy, and part of our student privacy policy governs what applications are being used and allowed to be used.
Right.
So we are covering a lot of that there. And that was a really big deal for the board. I think it was 2 years ago, because we wanted to make sure that any communications that were happening between coaches and volunteers were, there was a record of it.
Right.
Right. So, because that protects our coaches and our teachers, and it protects the students, and it allows parents that transparency to see what those communications look like.
So that plays again that a lot of this is covered elsewhere and therefore probably not necessary.
Is the yearbook addressed in any policies?
I don't know. I don't even know how the yearbook works.
I think that was I think you were about to ask that question and ask me about the yearbook oversight, so I can get some more information about the yearbook. Yes, I think the vetting process is the yearbook coordinator and the principal, but I will confirm.
And then Jolston's too, they will also review and.
They'll flag some
determine.
things that
Mhm.
for
Yep.
those two people too.
Yeah. So, my dad used to work for Justin's when I was a kid. So he used to travel all over the place doing the rings and the yearbooks. So we had like when I was growing up, we had all of the yearbooks from all of the schools where he was whatever he did, which is really cool.
Do any kids still do class? Like I saw no interest in class rings.
I
when-
don't think it's
yeah.
been a thing for, I don't know, 20 years.
I had one, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I have a high school and a college ring, but they sit in a drawer. Like,
Right. Yeah, my husband's parents got him the college ring as well. I didn't get a college ring. And I don't think he's ever worn either one. I mean, when I'm old enough now, I'm aging myself. I was old enough that in high school, the ring was like a cool thing your senior year, and you like traded it with your boyfriend. And
it's like the Letterman jacket too. They get their letters now, but nobody wears a varsity jacket with their letter on it,
that's true. That's true. I have to show my kids my letter jacket.
right?
Like I tell them I lettered, but I don't even think they know what that means.
Yeah. And my son has a letter, which sits on a shelf in his bedroom, and then he just throws the pins next to it as he gets them every year.
All right, so can we hold on? I'm going to say table it. I don't want to make a motion to table it because then we have to make a motion to take it off the table and
To hold.
just kind of hold this one to find out if there
Ideas.
are any elements regarding the yearbook or there's also stuff, number 9 in here is about material from nonprofit community things that our principals think
even-
that we need to keep.
but
or
even when
incorporate somewhere else.
When those things are marketed, they have to be approved by. There's going to be a YMCA program pamphlet that goes out that has to be approved by central office before it's allowed to be distributed in our schools.
Interesting. So how does that work? So when my kids were little, they did the running program. Is it the Boys and Girls Club that does it? No, Nashua PAL, cross country. And I see the kids in the fall up at Birch Hill
Riders,
running,
right.
right? They run right by my house. So is that go to the superintendent to approve it or each individual principal?
So sometimes both, meaning with the nonprofits, it might be going, can I'll pick on PAL. It was a really good example by Mr. Johnson. We'll get something from the PAL program and we'll be asked to do, principals might be asked to distribute that to their school community. So it's not just, PAL coming in and just throwing out pamphlets into, that there's kind of a vetting process is in place for that to occur.
Right. So there's a difference in my mind between district policy and then district protocols, right? And the protocols are things that the district doesn't need the Board of Ed getting involved in, right? And so I guess my question is just to come back to us with making sure that the people involved don't need the Board of Ed involved in this process. We also, just for the record, do have a policy in the Ks on advertising in the schools. Which, let's see if I can pull it up real quick.
I think we just reviewed that, didn't we? Last year?
Yeah, pull it up. It's a K policy, I'm pretty sure, which is communities home. There it is, advertising and sponsorship in schools, which we looked at last summer. And so, because we do have, oh, this says incidental advertising defined as advertising which is embedded in improved classroom materials, equipment, vending machines, logos, sports equipment, brand equipment. So there is something in here about it. And then this one talks specifically about advertising on school property, Stellos athletic fields, and then all of that has to be approved by the Board of Education. The locations have to be approved by the Board of Education. And then it talks about advertising in the yearbooks, newspapers, school-related events.
So it's in there.
And this one actually says no advertising shall promote the use of tobacco, alcohol, drugs, gambling, weapons, all the things that are listed there. Students can't be required to advertise a product. That includes the, remember when we were kids, we had to sell candy bars and stuff for
Oh,
our
yeah.
sports teams?
Yeah.
We don't really do that anymore, and you can't require it as a condition of participation.
Does that apply as well to like the sports booster type things and stuff?
It's voluntary.
It has to be voluntary.
Yep. You can't be barred from participating because your family doesn't want you to sell, booster stuff. Although most kids enjoy it,
Sure.
or
It gets them out.
gets them out, the other thing, oh, and this has a whole thing on incidental advertising. I should have pulled this up earlier. Sorry.
I mean, from what you're saying, it sounds like we really can rescind this one without any worries.
I think so. And then this policy also talks about advertising as recognition. And so the school district has been very blessed that we have some amazing community partners in businesses that are here in Nashua. So, for example, our CTE program offers an underwater robotics course, which is like the coolest thing ever. And EAE donated the tanks and equipment that those students use to learn how to do underwater robotics. And so there's a little plaque that says they came from. And then just to plug on that more, so when our community partners give us stuff that we can then teach kids how to do that job, a lot of times they also partner with us on things like internships.
Oh, that's great.
Job opportunities afterwards. So we have a really wonderful and robust relationship with a lot of our community partnerships. And I don't think we get enough advertising about that.
Promote a lot of the good things that really go on a daily basis, you're right?
Right? Like, I know that like some
We
of
need
the
a good things segment of our.
we really do. Like we should be highlighting how some of the automotive students are going directly like into careers and like, how the machining students can get jobs making $75,000 a year right out of high school, and you can get your pilot's license through our drone program. Like we should be talking about that stuff at the school board.
That's really cool. I didn't know that they could get their pilot's
Yeah. And then FEMA does an internship through the local emergency management, and so our kids who complete their drone thing and their pilot license are eligible for that internship.
One of
And it's a lucrative career.
the application for the NHB SA scholarship program, the essay they have to write is about how can your board be more active recognizing accomplishments within the schools.
Oh, that's a good essay. I sent that to Dante Castellano, who was our previous student board member,
Mhm.
just because he does, like he's just a really accomplished kid. All right, so based on policy KHB, which is the other advertising policy, I think we don't need
this one.
this one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move that we rescind 2210.1.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And so that's all I have for tonight. I asked Mr. Plaska to bring a bunch of policies to Mr. Donovan before he retires. Which is really mean of me, but I really would like his input before he goes on to be relaxed and happy. And so those policies are DFGA, which is crowdfunding, which I don't think we're really doing a lot of anymore, like GoFundMe's and such. After COVID, that's kind of died off, but maybe it'll ramp back up with ESSER funds ending. I don't know. KCD is gifts and donations. There's some legal updates about how much money um, the superintendent can accept without needing the school board's approval. And so Nashua is really fortunate. There is a charitable trust that donates $10,000 every year to the football program. And so that comes before the board every year. But the laws are changing about, they're raising the limits of what the superintendent can accept without needing us to accept it. I kind of like having the public thank you because I think it's important to acknowledge when people are giving back to their community. And then there's two financial reports and time and effort policies that I don't really understand at all that I've asked Mr. Donovan to look at because finance is not my jam. We could maybe ask finance to look at them. Miss Safer, you're chair of finance, aren't you? Yes. Yes, you are. So DIC and DK. There's two more. I know, Mr. Donovan. And then FA and FAA are FAA is facilities management. FAA is school properties. There were some updates in state laws um, regarding how we handle unused school properties. And so on FAA, the law changed last year so that charters get right of first refusal for school district properties that are no longer being used. So when schools close, charters have first right of refusal. I don't know if that applies to Nashua because Nashua and Manchester are unique in that we are not an independent school district or part of the city. So we don't really own our buildings. We were just talking about this at the board last night. So I've asked that someone find that out. Okay. So that we can update our policy appropriately. And then I sent everyone an email this afternoon because I couldn't print it out with the newest legal updates from the School Board Association. And so Title IX will be coming, and then a bunch of anti-discrimination policies will be coming over the next few months. Trying to think, there's a whole bunch of them.
Anyone know when Mr. Donovan's last finance meeting is going to be, or his last Board of Education meeting will be?
So
Sometime in June.
yeah, he's retiring as of mid-July, but I think he did it like 2 days before that July Board of Ed meeting. So there's a whole bunch of that have small updates. So Mr. Posca and I will sit down and look at this long list and see, because some of them are overlapped with the legal updates from the fall. They included them in this list, so we may have updated some of these already.
And I did follow up with Mr. Donovan the other day, so he knows this is coming. So this is
No, I felt
farewell
bad.
to us.
I had like a panic attack. I was like, what am I going to do? Who's going to know the answer?
I am a little bit worried about who's going to be running the finance committee meetings with me because he's always done such a good job, and I can't even imagine anyone else at that table.
Yes, but there is an assistant director of finance, right? I forget.
Crystal DeGray.
Mr. Gray. And she seems very competent.
Yeah, but she won't have the same dry humor that Mr. Donovan does.
That, well, I don't know. I've only met her a few times. But she's been here for almost a year now, I think.
Since October.
Since October. Right. So she's had quite a bit of time to be mentored by Mr. Donovan. So hopefully she can.
I'm sure she'll be great.
Oh.
Everybody, Mr. Posco was new. You didn't know what to expect. He's been fine.
If that's the bar, she'll be really good.
All right, folks. So that's all I have for tonight. And I will continue to try and fix my printer. But I did email everybody the list so that you can print it out and look at it, and prepare questions and whatever. I move that we adjourn.
Second?
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 And it is 5:36.